HealingYourself.Life provides information for awareness, educational, and support purposes only and does not diagnose or prescribe treatment for any medical condition. Viewers are encouraged to do their own due diligence and consult with their own medical caregivers before making personal treatment decisions. Welcome back to HealingYourself.Life. We're here with our off-grid doctor, Dr. Nielsen MD. He also runs a survival compound and Christian mission in the country of Haiti. He's here with us again on HealingYourself.Life. Dr. Nielsen, thank you for joining us.
Good to be here. We've had a little break.
We have.
We've both been busy.
There have been more than a handful of sessions that we've had with you focusing on specific topics of high interest to those who want to be health aware, being able to take care of some of the major risks in their lives, as well as reducing the chances that they'll be in a really tough situation if they lose mainstream medical care. But we've really never given you a chance to give us an introduction to the beginning of all of this. And a lot of this material has been drawn from a book that you're in the process of writing. And we would like to kind of go back to the beginning and let you get us off started on the right foot, so those who are going to watch the whole episodes can have a real solid beginning.
Right, great.
So with that, why don't you go ahead and start us?
Well, I did a lecture on this same material a couple years ago with a guy I lectured with, Jack. And most people have a view of their health that's unfortunately pretty much a black box. And most of us haven't really retained much of our anatomy, histology, physiology from junior and high school science. And that may be the last time that we saw an Ann. We probably thought it was very poorly taught and pretty disinteresting. And now that we're fighting for our health and getting older, that may have been a little far ago, And I'm always trying to get a few basic concepts before people that they really understand. One of the things that's really interesting, I teach a 2-weekend course on healing oils of the Bible using essential oils. Very, very complicated material, a lot of scripture in it. There's 386 references to healing oils in the Bible if you stay in Tyndale and the original Vulgate, and as you come forward into King James and then the NIV, it drops to about 20.
Wow.
And they all get, other than, the nard, which was spikenard that you pour on Jesus' head, all of a sudden is just an alabaster jar in NIV and et cetera. And we're kind of cleansing a lot of things that are really very basic medicine to us and that have been out there for thousands of years. And now that we have our pills and our surgeons, we're forgetting all of that. We're really forgetting that there's a lot of things that are much closer to our physiology. And one of the points I like to try and make to get people understand is that when you're looking at therapies, you're really looking at 4 kinds of therapies. You're looking at physiologic therapies. And physiologic therapy is that the chemicals that are inside your cells are in there in a given concentration. It's down at Avogadro's number of 10 to the minus 23rd, very dilute with a few exceptions like electrolytes, very, very dilute products. And when you give homeopathics or you give essential oils, you're giving things in physiologic doses. You intend to deliver things into the cell at about the same amount, okay? If you go above that, we would call that supraphysiologic. An example of that would be I took 20,000 milligrams of vitamin C for my thyroid cancer when I was 31 years old. And now that's not physiologic vitamin C, which is someplace between 30 and 2,000. It was 20,000, super physiologic. Okay. Another one would be sometimes when I can't sleep, I take 5,000 milligrams of taurine. Okay. Way more taurine than your body would need. Okay. But, it's a nice, safe way to induce sleep. And so that's physiologic and super physiologic. And as much as possible, if you don't want to have side effects, we really want to be in those 2 categories. But then we have pharmacologic doses. Well, pharmacologic dose doesn't have anything to do truly with physiology, you're not giving something that fits inside your physiology. You're just taking some chemical and saying, I can poison my way to a better symptom profile. And so maybe I want to knock down all my COX-1 and COX-2 enzymes so that I don't hurt. I'll take some Motrin, right? But there aren't any really technically Motrin receptors in the body. You're just simply, poisoning all these enzymes. And all pharmaceuticals basically work by selectively poisoning enzymes to get you the result that you want. And of course, there's always detriments to that. That Motrin doubled your risk of heart attack for the next 7 days. Yeah, and etc. Okay, and then we have supra-pharmacologic therapies. Okay, and we would consider those overdoses. You took too much of a good thing, and you would have intentional poisoning. Chemotherapy comes to mind. Okay, right? There's an outside possibility that chemotherapy might have some effect on you at pharmacologic doses, maybe even physiologic doses. Okay, but clearly until you kill your bone marrow, that's super pharmacologic doses. So first of all, I want people to get to the point where they think through that process of where am I on that physiologic to pharmacologic dose. Okay, I think that I have people come in all the time and they say, I don't want to take that, I want to take an herb. And I go, what do you think an herb is? It's just a naturally occurring form of a pharmacologic product. What's willow bark? Aspirin. What's Taxol for chemotherapy? Came from the yew tree. What's Lanoxin? Digitalis, the plant. And there are a lot of herbs that really aren't safe, like echinacea. I mean, echinacea is the #1 cause of death from herbs in Germany. That entire population thinks it's a nutrient, and people die from it all the time. And so, I want to kind of get everybody to kind of file that piece of information away. Then you come into a fifth category, and that's really xenopharmacology, meaning this is just not normal. No one should do this to themselves. The human body makes aspartame, NutraSweet, okay, but it is all dextroisomer. It is a non-racemic product. It is only the right-handed molecule. If you put the molecule in a mirror, you would have the levo isomer. When they make NutraSweet, they make it racemic, 50-50 left and right. And honestly, the dextro doesn't do much bad to you, but man, that levo will screw you up real good. And that's why NutraSweet's poisonous, is because you're doing the Superman Bizarro thing and living in the inverted world, okay? And so this is what we're doing when we take Provera, the fake progesterone that causes cancer and osteoporosis and Alzheimer's. You're taking a perfectly good progesterone molecule and turning it into a completely alien molecule that is extremely toxic. That's different than taking a pharmacologic agent that had an opportunity to be right. At one molecule, this stuff's wrong. And so that's really xenopharmacology, foreign to the human body. Don't do this, don't go down that path.
Do GMOs fall in that same category if we eat GMO foods, that sort of thing? Or is that just a
I don't know. The more I read GMOs, the more I've decided I can't figure this stuff out. But when we spent one session talking about these, and I got a little bit better at them, but there are so many things going on there because we're doing such a unique thing, screwing up our own bowel flora. And then the glyphosates that are in Roundup are just poisons, just like, mercury or NutraSweet. They're going to be one of the pharmacologic agents and fit in that category. And so all of that discussion it took me preparatory today to going, okay, I want to go back and kind of cover a little basic biochemistry. By the way, this was in the paper today. It's my dad's 96th birthday. Oh, 50 years in practice as a family doc before he retired. It just showed up in the paper today. I went, oh my gosh, that was incredible. So happy birthday, Dad. As I prepared for this, I'm going, what is the name of that book? And I spent all day going, I really want to find this book. And I couldn't remember it, and I knew the author, but I couldn't find the name. And I Googled pictures, photos, and the cover of the book came up. And this book affected me a lot back in the early 90s. It's by James C. Carter, MD, doctorate in public health. He's the head of public health at Tulane and at someplace in Boston, Columbia. And that was the original copy. And when I went to try and find it, apparently it's come out in a second edition that looks like that is $59 brand new and $3 used on Amazon.
All right.
So clearly it's not in publication anymore. And the reason that I really wanted to go at it is this guy was on my contract research organization board. He was one of my many investigators back when I was doing all the, not FDA pharmaceutical research, but the alternative medicine research back in the mid-90s. One of the brightest men I've ever met, and just a wonderful, wonderful man. And the cover of his book has a list of things that we're gonna cover. And he says, racketeering in medicine, the suppression of alternatives. And I think that's the basic story here. And he lists 10 things, and then he marks them all out except drugs and surgery, which is how I've always described, because of Jim Carter, I've always told people, we're in a drugs and surgery society. I got that from Jim. And he said, everything else has been ruled out. We just give drugs till it doesn't work, then we operate on something, and we apologize for the bad outcome. And that's kind of healthcare. And now that healthcare is kind of falling apart, and the nurse practitioners are taking over, and the surgeons aren't as good as they used to be, we're getting a lot more bad outcomes. And he had listed acupuncture, preventative therapies, clinical nutrition, surgery, herbal therapies, which I wrote behind it, drugs. I consider them to be the same, but herbs are safer. EDT chelation, which honestly we don't do much anymore because the mechanism of heart disease is changing. Detoxification, which EDT chelation is detoxification, so that was kind of strange. Drugs, which is interesting because EDTA is a drug, and so I found that a little hypocritical. And then chiropractic, environmental medicine, which I'd kind of throw Roundup and GMO under that today, okay? Immune system stimulation, allergies, allergy therapy, what we call allergy 2. Osteopathy, which I'd put with chiropractic. They're both primarily, what's the difference between an osteopath and an MD? They manipulate like a chiropractor. So I'd throw those together. Fasting, and then he really left off hormone replacement. Now today we'd add Lyme biofilm and EMF, the electromagnetic frequency problems. And so that's really kind of how I'm breaking down the way that I look at care. I go, you have to figure out, I keep a little note. My dad taught me this 50 years ago. I'm going to get it up there close, so I got to find the camera. Called Vindicate. And when I don't know what somebody has, I go, is this vascular, inflammatory, neoplastic tumor, degenerative deficiency, idiopathic intoxication, congenital, I was born with it, autoimmune, allergic, traumatic, or endocrine?
Most people might not know the word idiopathic.
Don't know what it is. Okay. Yeah, idiopathic means the doctor doesn't know what's going on. And that little thing with a piece of tape on this lived on my bulletin board now. I've had to type it up a couple times because it got ripped up or worn off. But I've had that thing on my bulletin board now for 42 years. And there are a lot of times when I kind of get stuck and I go, I'm just going to go back and vindicate this and think it out. That's what this really is. This is really about, as a consumer, you really want to be able to sit down when you're trying to get better and go, I've got to figure out what's going on, and I need to figure it out now. I went rafting with my son on the Shenandoah last week, and I fell in the water more than everybody else because I was captain of the boat and had to go up the hills and tie things off, and did a lot of fishing and I went underwater, and nobody else went underwater. And the day after I got off the water, I was the sickest I've ever been in my life. I had Campylobacter. Oh, it was awful. And as I'm laying in the hotel, slowly developing this Campylobacter, I've gotten hypothermic. I haven't had any salt because we forgot to take it with us for 4 days. So I'm drinking water, not getting salt, and I'm having all these strange neurologic symptoms, which Vitalite made go away. And I'm laying in bed going, come on, you can do this. You may feel terrible, but you've got to. Then finally I went, oh my gosh, I need electrolytes. And I, made, electrolytes in water and drank it. And 2 minutes later, my cramps went away. And I went, okay, I got that one right. Well, it took me another day to figure out that I had dysentery. Everybody tends to bail out and go, well, I'm just going to hang on, grit my teeth, and wait to get to the doctor. And the plain fact is, although eventually I unfortunately had to take 2 antibiotics to get over this Campylobacter, making my probiotics that I prehydrate in almond milk made half my symptoms go away almost immediately. I didn't need a doctor to do that. What harm is there in taking probiotics?
Right.
Look at how much it helped my dysentery. The issue that I want to communicate is that when you're sick and you're in trouble and you're having problems, I don't want you to see this as a black box. I want you to be able to see yourself and ask the questions. What do I know about myself? What's my hydration? What's changed in my food? Have I changed my supplements? Am I on a new drug? Have I suffered a trauma? Am I under a stress? What are all of the variables? And then to ask yourself, what is it that I can do while I wait to get to the doctor that's going to support me? Make me better, work on my hydration, reduce my stress, stabilize my diet, and eliminate anything that might make me sick. And I don't think people look at themselves that way. I don't think that the average consumer, I have some patients who I marvel at the emails I get, and they've completely dissected their problem. They've broken it down, they figured it out, and they go, and I'm down to this, and I don't know what to do. I had one today from Vicky that was just brilliant, okay? And I went, it's idea number 2. Let's go there. That was a good idea, But most people are giving up their opportunity to control their own health care. And as a result, they're wasting money, they're delaying, and they're putting themselves at risk. And so, I want people to be able to understand, we're just a whole bunch of cell membranes. This is a cell membrane. It's just made up of gamma-linolenic acid molecules, little ball with 2 strings on it, facing each other. It's 1 micron thick. It has pores in it to let things in and out for active transport. And we're hurting these things. We're doing terrible things. The EMF is awful. So are the heavy metals that we're getting. Well, why is it important? Because we're in a war. We're in a war to main adenosine triphosphate in our body. And if we have ATP, we're energy up and everything's firing and everything's running. When ATP breaks down, it gives up energy and water. 1 molecule of water. Now it has to go to all the work to make this little Duracell battery and recharge it over again. Well, why is that important? I had a new patient today. I told the girls when I saw his lab, get him in tomorrow. He's very sick. I have to have him right back. He has no ACTH, no cortisol. He has Addison's disease. You can die from Addison's disease. Why would you die from Addison's disease? Because you're living at the bottom of your energy curve and you have no reserves. None. And so get in an automobile accident and you die waiting for the rescue squad to come. You just don't have that deep bench, okay? And all of this goes down to the fact that all of us have to maintain our modes of transport. We have to have that ability to transport things in our body using ATP. Some things we transport are passive. If I take plain old magnesium oxide and happen to absorb some, it's because it fell in my body. But if I take magnesium glycinate or magnesium taurine, the body wants that taurine, essential amino acid, so it pumps the magnesium into my body.
Okay.
Working with your physiology. Amazing how many people think they're taking magnesium and they're taking garbage. Okay, but that's not my point. My point is that we have to understand that we're really a lot of modes of transport. I'm studying mycelia and fungus as a part of my permaculture in Haiti. And I marvel at the fact that I've learned that if you put 3 cultures of mycelia that may be 50 feet across a piece, and they're colonies, one of them may be in a copper-rich environment, one of them may be in a manganese-rich environment. The one in the middle will make a deal with the other 2 and say, if you give me sugar, I'll go sell your copper and get you some manganese. And broker. This is fungus. Well, we're doing the same thing. Our entire cells are all out there going, I'm short on this, but I got that. And, and everything's trying to be kept in balance. Well, the body that runs the best is the best that doesn't have any deficiencies, right? The minute that you start going along with low magnesium, now you can't use your calcium because they're a pair, and all of a sudden your muscles don't work. And so you're going into congestive heart failure or can't run a marathon just because you didn't have any magnesium, And so, that concept, and, there are a lot of people who don't take any supplements. They don't fix anything. Their attitude is, if I need something, my doctor will write a drug for it. And all the research has shown they don't live as long.
Or actually, some people think if I just eat reasonable kinds of foods, I'll get all the nutrition I need. That's why they don't take supplements.
Not from the reasonable foods they're selling us.
Exactly. Modern experimental foods,
Yeah, but if I could take my Wayback Machine back with Dr. Peabody back to the 1950s and replant my farm and all of those things that my grandmother was growing, I'd have a shot at it. But not with what Burbank left us, And that all comes down to this one, amino acids. Right? We've got 20 amino acids. 8 of them are essential. The essential amino acids mean the body can't make them. They have to find them in diet. And the percentage of essential amino acids that is in a red, delicious apple that was bred to be bright red and full of sugar and big, instead of being hard and low in water content, high in fiber, and a lot of nutrients. Those are 2 completely different fruits. And you can't even find a Jonathan apple now. One Johnny Appleseed planted one in my backyard before my backyard existed. And I grew up eating apples as a kid from a tree that Johnny Appleseed planted. Pretty amazing stuff to me now looking back. That was a much better food. Just much better food. And so you want to understand that there are all kinds of types of proteins, and proteins are made up of a line of amino acids, right? Okay. And those types of proteins are enzymes, structure, like collagen, motility, like actin, myosin in your muscles, regulatory, managing your DNA, okay? Storage, we're putting away casein and albumin, and if we start to starve, we can pull that back out and be a protein source. Making hormones, okay? Receptor surfaces, we're going to go there next. Transport molecules, a lot of, the thyroid in your blood, only about 7% of it is free in your blood. 93% of it is bound to thyroid binding globulin so that you have a steady supply and you can pull from a reservoir. And special purpose proteins that do just amazing things, and a lot of those are in the brain. And here's a true electron micrograph of an enzyme. Pretty big protein molecule. And the pink area is the receptor area where what the enzyme is working on touches. And then in it, you can see a little model of a molecule. And that's what the enzyme is working on. So the pink area is called the substrate surface. And this isn't used up when it digests something. It stays alive and says, send me another one. I'll do another one. I'll do another one. Eventually, obviously, it gets worn out. It breaks down. It has to be remanufactured. And our entire body, at a protein level, is really running off of these enzymes, which is the reason why that you have so many enzymes that you can take as supplements. And if you take them with food, they digest your food. Right. But if you take them on an empty stomach, they go into your bloodstream and lower your cholesterol and break down blood clots and, are anti-inflammatory and relieve your pain. Curcumin, okay, good example, okay. we're doing the same thing with fats. I only brought one of my 3 charts on omega fatty acids. This one's the one for omega-3s. And we can see these omega-3s as food, and they certainly are, but when you get done, obviously omega-3s are anti-inflammatory. They're heading down that pathway. And then you want to understand in and out. When you take ATP and release water and get ATP, that's an exothermic reaction and makes energy. But if you want to take glucose and ammonia and put them together to make glutamine, you have to put energy in, an endothermic reaction. So obviously, this is the motor for doing things, and this is the result, making things in the body. And that's actually happening at a heat and generation and energy production level. The point being, again, back at the fact that we get up in the morning, and once we work the stiffness out, we have about as much energy as we're going to have. And then as the day goes on, we eat up our hormones, we wear into our ATP, our cortisol starts to fall, and we get tired. And if we're healthy, tired happens when we put our head on the pillow. If we're chronically ill, it happens at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Maybe it happens at 9 in the morning when we got a problem. The question is, how do I change that energy supply? And doctors don't think this way. They don't look at it that way. And a great example, at least once a month, I have a new patient who comes in, and their cardiologist is managing them for congestive heart failure and has them on their ACE inhibitor and their anticoagulants and wants to put a pacemaker in them. And I go, have you tried CoQ10, magnesium, and D-ribose and L-carnitine? And they go, no. And I go, well, we're not going to do them one at a time. Here you go. Here's the 4. And I get an email from them 3 days later, and they go, I think one of these is causing a side effect. I've lost 13 pounds and I can't stop peeing. I go, yeah, your congestive heart failure is going away. What did I do? Those were the 4 things that are being eaten by the heart when it's injured. And I'm just sitting there giving the things the heart says, I'm running 3% on this. And I go, and the first thing I do is the minute they say that, is I go, good, stick with that. After you've kind of stabilized, you want to take each ingredient and double it for 3 days. And if you can't tell, you're okay. But if you double it and you do even better, you aren't taking enough. Right? And that brings us back to the beginning of our story. Essential oils. I would use a lot more essential oils if I was better trained. There are hundreds, although most people work within probably about 20 of them. But the reason that I put this up is because I want to have people see that these things aren't magic, okay? There are 3 kinds of essential oils. There are phenols, there are sesquiterpenes, and there are monoterpenes. The biggest one is the sesquiterpenes. If that feels familiar to me, that's turpentine. Frankincense smells like turpentine. Okay? Terpenes. Okay? And these are volatile oils. Put them out on a counter, and the monotrines, the smallest ones, will come off first, and the frankincense will have 1 smell, and then in about 2 minutes, the isoprenes will come off. It will have a second smell, and then a musty, moldy, very nice smell, the smell that the Catholics have in their scepters at Mass, is going to get you down to the sesquiterpenes, okay, that really smell cool, okay? Well, look at what these things do. The original ones clean off cell receptors. The sesquiterpenes erase miswritten information in your DNA, okay? And the monoterpenes reprogram the DNA back to a healthy cell. Well, heck, I'm impressed. That's pretty cool stuff. If anybody ever wants to learn a lot about that, David Stewart wrote a wonderful book called Healing Oils of the Bible, and it actually comes with 12 bottles of healing oils in a kit that are cheaper than you could ever buy them. The book's like free. And he's both a Methodist pastor and a PhD in biochemistry. Neat guy. And he wrote this wonderful book and just walks you through the whole Bible. And so when God tells Aaron to make the anointing oil to wash the brass basins and the alder, what were those 5 oils? All antibiotic. Come on, they're butchering animals on this alder and burning it. It needed to be sterilized. It's really cool, you know. And when you look at the anointing oil, okay, that was made, it's all for spiritual centering and mental clarity and great stuff, you know. We've had really, really good biochemistry for a long time. You know, it was given to us by God, and we're losing all of that stuff, okay? The other one, we're all really well familiar with this one. We keep talking about it, is EMF, cell towers, cell phones. California's in the middle of a big lawsuit right now. They're talking about trying to take the strength of phones and cell towers down like Canada did. Europe has. Europe and Canada are both turning their cell towers back down again. And we're still trying to get Verizon to get all of the United States bright red.
100% coverage, right?
Yeah, 100% coverage. Bright red as in you glow when you stand in front of your microwave, bright red, right? And what we're missing is that not only are we a chemical event, which is what I've been talking about with this physiology, but this thing said, someplace in here, did I get it out of order? Yeah, I think I did. Or maybe I didn't print it. The next page in Stuart's thing is about each one of these molecules has an electrical component to it, and it transmits a frequency. Is it this one? Here it is. There it is, right there. Each one of these oils has its own frequency. Well, what do you think your cell phone's doing to that frequency? What do you think that cell phone is doing to that electrical system, your acupuncture points? Nothing good. That's what we know. And the canary in the coal mine on this one is the Lyme patients, of course. Lyme patients, they just, hate the fluorescence, and they can't get far enough from their cell phone, and they can tell when they get in a router-rich environment. They can tell when they're driving under cell towers because they're already electrically neurostimulated all the way to the top, so they get sparky. Yeah, I got a lady, man. She is the canary. She has taught me more things. I thought all of this was about 110 AC. It isn't. It's about DC. It's all direct current. And so she figured it out because her father broke his hip and they brought home a lift chair. And when they plugged it in, it threw her to the floor. And she said it's 110. And my electrical engineering guy said, no, they put a battery backup system in it. So if the power goes out, he can still get his chair unfolded. And that process of having a DC motor, he says she's having problems with her furnace motor. And he says she's going to hate the water pump outside her house that has the meter on it, and she's going to hate Christmas lights. Boy, did all that turn out to be true. Those are all DC. And she does. She just, starting in October, she just starts dreading the holiday season as everybody starts putting great big webs of low-frequency DC current. And we're all doing that to ourselves. I mean, we already got the router and the cell phone, and now we're going out and putting up Christmas lights. And we don't think about it. So I come full circle. Homeopathics. Okay? Remember, we started out at physiologic doses. And so here's the crazy, this is the thing about homeopathics that drives me crazy, is if I have a product that is 2 to 8 times concentration, and I take that homeopathic and I dilute it 10 to 1 with water, then it turns in 9 to 11 and it becomes stronger.
More potent.
More potent. And I do it again and it becomes high potency. I had a hard time believing that at first. Really kind of struggled with that concept. I went, that's incredible. There's a famous story about the aconite cat. The Germans, no one is allowed to be a physician in Germany until they're a homeopath. Okay? Every doctor in Germany and many of the doctors in all of Europe, and especially in Russia, are homeopaths. And of course, they use a lot of homeopathics. And We use none here. I use some in practice. I'm just not as well trained as I wish I was. I'm always behind. There's too many things to learn. And over the years, there have been many scientists who have said homeopathy can't be true. Mm-hmm. And the homeopaths have always baffled them. They say, are you familiar with the poison aconite? And they go, yeah. And they go, bring a bottle of aconite, distilled water, a gram scale, a measuring system, and your house cat. And I'm going to prove you that homeopathy works. And the guy mixes up aconite and makes a nice toxic solution of it that is like a 1 to 1,000 concentration, and gives 1 drop of it to this cat, and this cat dies instantly. And the guy goes, you killed my cat. He says, it's okay. And then he takes the 1 to 1,000 and he dilutes it 1 to 1,000 to 1,000,000, and then he dilutes it 1 to 1,000, etc., until he gets to Avogadro's number. We're going down 10 to the third until you get to 10 to 20 to the 3 of the same thing that just killed the cat. So now this cat has 100 million molecules of aconite in him. And then you turn around and inject the low dose concentration of aconite. The cat comes back to life. Excuse me? I got 1 million molecules and you just made it 1,000,001 and unpoisoned my cat. And the doctors and the biochemists go, I don't get it. You go, that's right, you don't get it. You don't think in terms of physiologic function. I gave something that worked physiologically and reversed something that worked suprapharmacologically. And we're back at the beginning of the discussion. I can undo the damage of suprapharmacologic things like chemotherapy with homeopathics. And we're not doing that. We don't have any interest in it. The whole country doesn't care about this.
Well, I know some families that have gone through chemotherapy with a child, and they'd be very interested.
Yeah. And so, it's just fascinating stuff. And, my struggle every day is, as I'm sitting here typing and listening to people and looking at lab slips and being real scientific, is my objective has to be to regather myself and go, okay, let's do that. Turn your hat around and you're a different person and go, let's think about this correctly. What are my options? Which brings me back to Jim Carter. Drugs and surgery. Drugs and surgery. And we don't think about any of those other tools. And time has made that list get bigger. We have more good physiologic therapies today than we had when I entered integrative medicine in 1993. And we have more things poisoning us and infecting us today than we had then. Glyphosates and Lyme, and etc. And we're not getting a dime smarter. It's very frustrating.
So this can be overwhelming to the average person because they see you've been studying this for decades and you still say there's so much to learn. So you already kind of gave some words of encouragement to the average person that you may not know everything, but start with what you do know about yourself and about what you've been taking and what's changed. Any other specific? I mean, you've mentioned some books, and people can avail themselves of that. But are there other specific steps that people they'll watch the video?
Well, I think to a large degree, the answer is, when you go to your chiropractor and he's treating you with muscle energy and standard process products, you're at physiologic doses. You want to be asking the question all of the time, how do I change my vendors? How do I get away from the drugs and surgery, which is only working worse as healthcare falls apart in America? And how do I go find that state-of-the-art chiropractor that really, really is well-trained, and his entire embodiment of his theory is that he wants to do no harm, which is what physicians are supposed to want to say, but they're not doing that at all. But that chiropractor is doing that. And, go find your kinesiologist, go find your acupuncturist and do traditional Chinese medicine, which is between physiologic and pharmacologic doses of traditional Chinese herbs with acupuncture and good energy, right? Go find your homeopath. He's backed up. His patients all love him, and it takes 6 months to get in. Okay, there aren't enough homeopaths in this country.
I have two testimonials. One is our one of our sons was born. He had nighttime apnea as an infant. One treatment from a chiropractor, never happened again. And the other one was our son who had he had very flare-ups of all kinds of bad behavior, violent behavior, that sort of thing. When he would, especially with allergic reactions to mold and that sort of thing, and artificial chemicals in like car interiors, that sort of thing. And oh my gosh, we tried. They sent us home with albuterol, and it just made him even get more violent and everything. But one treatment from a constitutional homeopathist, and his complete composure changed.
Completely changed.
I was walking him to school, and he said, "Thanks, Dad." And I said, "Thanks for what?" He said, "For holding my hand." And this is the same kid that was telling my wife, "I'm going to break all your fingers," about a week before that.
Right.
So.
Yeah, well, and I have one of those. I about 20 years ago, I had a mother in my practice who I wasn't seeing the child, but she was taking the child to a craniosacral therapist, up-ledger technique, because he had hydrocephalus and increased pressure in his brain. Well, some ER doc heard that story and decided that was child abuse and captured the kid, threw him in the hospital, got him involved in the court, and fortunately, they called in a neurosurgeon who is reasonable in my community and a friend of mine. And so I hear about this story. And so I called him up and I said, "Did you do a tap?" And he said, "Yeah." And I said, "What's your opening pressures?" And he said 50, and it should be under 12. And he said he needs a shunt. And he says the family's fighting it and we're locked in a court battle. And I said, "As you should be." I said, "She had it controlled." He said, "What do you mean?" I said, "She was doing craniosacral therapy and it was fine." He says, "Oh, that can't work." I said, "You're willing to bet on that?" He said, "What do you want, Jay?" And I said, "I want you to let her take this kid back to the craniosacral therapist, and she will then agree to another spinal tap immediately after." And the pressures were 9. And Pat walked into court and said, "Leave this kid alone. Never put a shunt in him." And he outgrew it. Same story. That's why, that's all about that cranial base getting constricted, dropping that CSF flow. Some things are mechanical. Some things are structural in your body. What doctor thinks anything's structural unless it's cancer you need cut out? Lots of structural things. That's why doctors don't like chiropractors, because chiropractors keep fixing things that can't be seen. They can only be felt by very adept hands. Yeah. But, if you went back and asked me the history of, as I entered integrative medicine, and my dad had the same experience. My dad was 70 years old when he entered integrative medicine. And he walked up to me at lunch of the first day of an ACAM meeting. And I said, "How was the meeting?" He says, "Man, I am mad." And I thought, I knew it was a bad idea to bring him. And I didn't say anything, okay? I just let him talk. He was sitting there. John Trowbridge, one of the greatest integrative doctors in America, was standing with me. We were getting ready to walk into a board meeting. And John looked at him and said, "Well, David, what's the matter?" And he says, "You're telling me they know all the biochemistry of irritable bowel syndrome and they haven't been telling me?" And I went, "Yeah, welcome to my world, Dad."
Yeah.
He was
mad that he hadn't been taught.
He had been mad that he hadn't been taught the right things. He was a really good doctor and a great investigator. And when you look up and ask me what happened in those first couple years, it was a deep sorrow to realize that I hadn't had the integrity to integrate my medical education with my practical experience. So much of this stuff for me, I was good at that stuff. I was good at physiology, pharmacology, all those things. And they just became memorized lists, but they didn't become weapons of action, And now they are,
Well, a lot of us, I think, are mad at ourselves and at the system because when you watch those ads on TV and they say, hey, this is going to solve your whatever it is problem, and then they go on and on for the next minute and a half and tell you how it's going to ruin your life,
Yeah.
but everybody's happy. It's like we're all shutting off that our instinctive part that knows better.
Yeah, right.
So, well, you've given us a lot to chew on. And again, if some of those books that they'll be able to refer back to and pick up some of those books and give us another fighting chance of learning more about this amazing black box that is our body, and to trust our instincts and trust our judgment a lot more about self understanding when we're feeling off balance. Dr. Nielsen, any parting thoughts for us before we?
Well said. Good summary.
All right. Well, we'll put this one before all the other episodes, and we'll keep making more. So people keep tuning in to HealingYourself.Life. Don't forget to check the like box, add a comment here if you've got a personal story of how you were able to get help outside of the drugs and surgery options. And we'll see you back again here on HealingYourself.Life.
Thank you.